for Hillsdale.com. Joining us now is Connor Boyack, author of the Tuttle Twins books, TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. Amazing kids book series, and everyone should check it out. Connor, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Charlie.
So, Connor, I want to use the lead-in of the flop, the multi-$100 million flop that is Snow White. Disney decided to resurrect Snow White and spend a lot of money. It had a terrible showing this last weekend. It turns out that millions of families do not want a repurposed, let's just say, modern take. You could say it's woke, but it certainly is it's with a flair of the worst of modernity, of a beautiful story that existed well over 100 years ago. You at the Tuttle Twins, you are the author and you are the brainchild of the Tuttle Twins, are having a lot of success getting down to fundamental truths and speaking in a way to families that appeals to them. Tell us more about the Tuttle Twins.
Well, I think you're right. There's been a lot of pushback from parents with Snow White. This is just the latest of a long series of pushback that we've seen. I'm actually very hopeful that we're seeing a lot of families stepping up and saying, no, we don't want that stuff in our home. What parents have lacked in past years are resources that can help them teach their children good ideas, good principles that aren't being shared in the schools. They're not being, shared on social media. And so fundamentally what the Tuttle Twins books are a resource for parents to read alongside with their kids, simple and fun stories that introduce the ideas of human flourishing. We're talking about the power of entrepreneurship, the importance of personal freedom, why merit is so important, right? Property rights, free markets, the ideas upon which America was built, but increasingly in America's schools, not only are these ideas not taught, if ideas like them are taught, they're quite opposite ideas. And parents then wonder as their kids march off to college, how did my child turn into this, brainwashed social justice warrior? Well, it's because you haven't engaged your children's minds when they were younger. And that's what Tuttle Twins is trying to do, to help parents engage their children with these ideas in a simplified, fun way, so that as they then go off to college or get on with their life, they've got a foundation of true principles to rest on.
And the popularity of it is growing right now. Everyone can check it out at TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. I'm going to buy a bunch of these for my kids. Finding good kids books is very, very hard. In fact, we went to Barnes & Noble recently, and our daughter just loves buying all the books. And it's very funny. She has great instincts. She went up to one of the books, and it was like a homosexual couple, and she looked at it, she said, that's not right. And she put it back down. It was like kind of like, we want you to be gay or some. And this is a kid's book. I mean, again, everyone in the audience can have your own views of marriage, but for a kid to have to be forced upon, her intuition is amazing. And so talk about how you are incorporating these beautiful ideas, liberty, family-friendly, let's just say pornographic elements in a way that kids actually want to read it. This is not a textbook. This is not just giving them Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom, but it is those ideas distilled in a digestible way for a child.
Well, I think you raise an interesting point with your personal story, that children are being bombarded with these types of ideas now. And when we started doing the Tuttle Twins in 2014 is when we published our first book, we had a lot of conservatives and libertarians and others say, wait, let kids be kids. We don't need to talk to them about these big adult ideas. We can wait until they're getting close to voting age. And so we got pushback even from our own tribe for doing children's books talking about these big adult ideas. Of course, going through the crazy BLM and DEI and all the stuff that we have in the past few years, nobody on our side talks that way anymore because they see what the left is doing, that they have just this cacophony of content that they're pushing out, whether it's cartoons or books or online stuff. And so now I think increasingly parents recognize, whoa, my children's mind is like ground zero in an ideological battlefield. And if I don't give my child armor and weaponry and knowledge of the enemy, then my child will become a casualty. And so we live in a world where we can't just assume that we can talk to our kids later about these ideas. We need to engage them. Frankly, we need to compete for their hearts and minds because they're being, attracted and exposed by so many hostile ideas. Parents often have been caught in a trap because I'll tell you, Charlie, the biggest problem we run into is freedom-loving moms and dads who do want their kids to learn these ideas, but they, the parents, feel ill-equipped to explain and teach these ideas to their kids. They feel, the parents, increasingly that, well, I don't know how to talk to my kids about economics or history. I did bad at that subject in school, right, 20 years ago. And so that's where the Tuttle Twins come in. We say, you don't have any prerequisites. You don't need to know this stuff. Just read some fun storybooks with your kids. We got some discussion questions at the end so that you can have amazing conversations. I think you'll resonate with this, Charlie. I, as a passionate lover of freedom here in America, I don't feel that we're going to save our country at the Capitol. I don't feel that we're going to save our country in the courtroom, even though we ought to engage in both those places. I think that if we're going to save our country, it's at the family dinner table. We have to rebuild social fabric. We have to model for our children what civic engagement looks like, what critical thinking looks like. And to do that, we have to empower parents to do this on the daily, in their home, in that environment where we can incubate strong, entrepreneurial, critical thinking minds that can be the future of saving our country.
And over 6 million copies sold. Just talk about what you are, the author of the Tuttle Twins. How did you conceptualize all of this? There's so many different, let's just say, sister or cousin equivalents, the Hardy Boys. I mean, typical ideas of, duos that go about life and this kind of adventure. How did you bring this from idea into reality?
Well, my partner Elijah, who's the illustrator of our books, he and I both had young kids at the time, and we are very passionate about freedom. And he had been working on like the Ron Paul campaign, and I had been helping, and we had been talking about like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity at some point to partner together. Meanwhile, I started a think tank, Libertas Institute, and I'm out there fighting for freedom, and I wanted to share with my kids what Dad does. When I'm helping this farmer fight eminent domain so he can save his land, how do I tell my 5-year-old what Dad did all day, right? Rather than I typed on a computer and simple stuff. I wanted to teach the substantive ideas, albeit at a simple level. So I did what any dad would do in my position. I literally went on Amazon and I said books that teach about property rights for kids, right? Children's books about free markets. Keep in mind, this is 2013. There was nothing. So as you point out, there's other children's series for adventure and ideas like kindness and honesty. But for economic ideas, civic and political ideas, historical stuff, there really was nothing. And so that was the spark. Elijah and I did a book. We had no vision of what it's become. It was just something we wanted for our kids. A lot of people bought it. They said, when are you doing the second one? A series was born. And frankly, things didn't really explode until COVID with all the craziness that happened. Suddenly families were like, what's happening to my country? All the freedoms that I guess I've been taking for granted are now under assault. And also I'm now a homeschooler apparently because all the schools are shut down. And so that was Tuttle Twins' big moment to really break through and start selling, 1 million books plus per year.
So let's go through just an onslaught of the type of books that kids have to experience. That, for example, there's this one, She-Ra and the Princess of Power. This one is, quote, Why We Love It. This is a Netflix series. It's not a book. It's a Netflix series. It's a cartoon. By the way, conservative parents are unknowingly allowing their kids to watch this stuff. This goes through the family filter because sometimes they'll say this is just a kid's account. Has there ever been a gayer, more inclusive cartoon than She-Ra and the Princesses of Power? The series was created by trans artist N.D. Stevenson, and it shows. The show explores queer love, queer struggle, and the ultimate queer joy. Adora and Katra share one of the most epic love stories set to screen, and they're surrounded by a literal rainbow of compelling, unapologetically queer and trans characters. We only wish there were more seasons. There's the list continues. There's multiple series like this. I guess SpongeBob is now gay, apparently, according to this list. Is this like the gayest list? Is that what we're looking at here? 55 total shows. SpongeBob, The Misadventures of Talking Sea Sponge, works at a fast food restaurant. Why We Love It, quote, SpongeBob has always been gay in our hearts. I mean, he, Patrick, and their little kiddo, Gary, are pretty much queer fam goals. Then in 2020, SpongeBob came out of the sea closet and is now canonically queer. Available on Prime, which many parents allow them to watch. People can also find the Tuttle Twins via Angel. How can they watch it, the Tuttle Twins, as well?
Yeah, so we have the books I've been talking about that have sold 6 million copies. We also have a cartoon with Angel Studios. It's free to watch. You can get the Angel Studios app or TuttleTwins.tv. Charlie, the list that you share goes on. There's many more shows and books that are pushing these types of ideas. I'm actually less worried about that, though, because when freedom-minded conservative parents see content like that, right, it raises the red flag. They shut it down. They ban Netflix and unsubscribe in their home. I'm less worried about that because parents are more easily able to detect that. I'm more worried about what parents struggle to detect, and that's the sub-mediocre content in our textbooks used in classrooms across the country, K to 12, that teach about government being the solution. And they do it in very subtle ways, right? They praise FDR and claim that he, saved the country from the Great Depression. They praise Woodrow Wilson and claim that the Federal Reserve helped, stabilize the economy and stop, massive swings in banking. These are things that parents struggle to detect, and yet plant seeds, stay with these children, and lead them down a path of supporting big government and ultimately Marxism. So what we're on guard for is not the big flashy stuff that make lists like that and get parents wrinkled. We're on the hunt for and helping parents detect the problems that they're not otherwise perceiving.
If pain is affecting your life, make 2025 the year of feeling good again. The year of moving better, sleeping better, feeling more alive, and their 3 of feeling good again. Try Relief Factor. Very good thing for a kid to read. 1-800-4-RELIEF. This is how you know that there's some good stuff on the Tuttle Twins. They have one that is The Creature from Jekyll Island, which of course is all about the creation of the Federal Reserve. That would be a very good thing for a kid to read. Connor continues us. So let me ask, are there books also for toddlers, 2, 3, 4-year-olds?
Absolutely. We have board books for toddlers, such as the ABCs of Liberty or the 1, 2, 3s of the Bill of Rights, indestructible books that your toddler can slobber on and they'll still learn about freedom. We got books for teenagers as well, so we run the entire gamut no matter the age of your child. And Charlie, this won't surprise you, when we've surveyed our audience, over 52% of parents tell us that they are learning new things for the first time, even though they got these books for their kids. We're educating entire families, and it's so critical because groups like yours are on college campus. We have to engage there. We've seen the closing of the American mind on these campuses. I contend that if we invest earlier and help families incubate these ideas even earlier, that helps, downstream solve so many other problems. And so families have struggled in the past to, how do I teach my kids about this stuff? How do I talk about it? I don't understand it very well. That's the problem we're trying to solve. Just read these fun books, talk about it together, and you'll be amazed at the aha moments that your kids will have.
So one of the books that we got about 6 months ago was a history book, allegedly. And it was a beautiful thing. It said, top moments in American history, monuments, I think it was all about. So, okay, what could possibly be wrong with monuments? We start reading this book, and there was an entire chapter illustrated of the Stonewall riots, which was a series of these spontaneous riots back in 1969, all about like the gay rights thing, page after page. And this is supposed to be a book to American monuments. Think of all the monuments that you could have for kids to learn. So you don't know that at this, you buy this monuments book, you don't know that. I start reading this stuff and it is remarkable, the toxins. Look, the bottom line is this, is that there are dark forces that are trying to harm our kids, and you must be vigilant, and it can be very subtle. And going back to the Snow White theme, there's this book, And Tango Makes Three, is the true story of a same-sex penguin. I don't know how it could possibly be a true story. Last year, the Escambia County School Board paid a law firm at least $107,000 to defend its removal, and Tango Makes Three after a lawsuit was filed by its authors. Imagine a school board investing six figures to defend itself against common sense because it's inappropriate to bring agendas to children. So just more broadly, what is your vision for the Tuttle Twins? You've had great success. Where do you want to see this go next?
Well, again, books like that, Charlie, raise the flag, and we have focused attention on that is clearly a problematic book. The history book that you mentioned. Think of the history books that are used in schools across the country. We actually purchased all the popular ones. We did a study of them. And what you find is that they are all great at teaching American history to kids if the goal is to help them win Jeopardy in the future by being able to recite every little factoid and random tidbit. But they did a horrible job at actually teaching the ideas, the philosophy, the values that formed this country. So the history books that we've created have tried to solve for that by saying, yeah, we got to teach the what happened and the who did it. That's important. But the real context is the ideas that were, that people were struggling over. You ask about a vision for America. I think of the NAEP scores that came out about a year ago. This is the national assessment of how kids are learning in America. And they found that for the eighth graders, when they tested them on American history, only 13% of them were proficient in American history. That's 1-3, not 3-0, 13%. So then I ask you, Charlie, and our audience, what becomes of America if the future voters are so ignorant about our past? Those who don't learn from the past, of course, are condemned to repeat it. So my vision for our country is that we can empower families across the country to learn these ideas together, to give their children an intellectual, ideological, historical foundation of ideas so that as they go out into society and they're bombarded with all the garbage that's going to come upon them, whether that's from peers, social media, academia, or whatever, they're going to be able to withstand it. They're not going to be an impressionable, robot that just is assimilated into the Borg hive mind. They're going to have the capacity to think critically, to act independently. But we've got to put in the work. We can't assume best intentions of a system that's clearly been corrupted, where the curriculum has been dumbed down. Parents need help. They need a lifeline. They want to step in and they want to help their kids. That's what the Tuttle Twins is trying to be, as a resource for them to do exactly that.
TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. Thanks so much. Great work. We'll have you back on soon. Check it out. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
That is TuttleTwins.com/Charlie. I'm buying some right now, and you should too. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Email us as always, freedom